Hello, everyone, and welcome to this second webinar and the first of a three-part series. I'm JP Levac, your host for today. I've been in the information technology sector for over 25 years. I started getting interested in blockchain technology around 2016 and went through the blockchain strategy program at Oxford Said School of Business back in 2018. Dr. Varma received his PhD from HEC Montreal and is currently assistant professor at Ramapo College of New Jersey. We'll have a Q&A session at the end of the presentation. If we don't get around to your question, or if we feel that it needs further development, no worries. We'll answer them in the coming week or two in the Q&A blog post. This presentation is being recorded and will be available exclusively through our private LinkedIn group, The Way of Tao, for 30 days before being released out in the public. We'll send you a link to it in the follow-up webinar, a follow-up to this webinar, apologies. So without further ado, I leave the floor to Dr. Varma. Enjoy the presentation.
Thank you, Jean-Pierre. I hope you're able to hear me clearly. Can you just validate that once, JP?
Affirmative.
And can you see my shared screen?
Yes, and you as well.
Thank you. Okay, next time we will try to get everybody to come on board directly rather than being in the, as just present as just viewers, so that we could have a more collaborative session. Now, this session, we were planning a lot about, we've been talking about how we are able to convey this whole new movement, if I may say, that I got involved about 5 years back. And, only every day I'm just getting amazed with the potential of this and how it kind of matches the way I think of how society should progress. My last presentation was an introduction to blockchain, something where, if you have had some kind of exposure, just a kind of, you've heard what blockchain is, maybe that presentation would be very interesting to get the ball started if you had attended it, or if you have seen the YouTube video of the presentation. This is building up on that. However, this can be seen in isolation also. Now, the reason why we split it into 3 parts is because of this little information that we have. Okay, every time I go and talk about blockchain, and this happens in university settings, and people know that I'm not a professor of finance, the first thing that comes to me is, should I invest in Bitcoin? And I have to explain to everyone that, I'm sorry, I'm not an advisor on cryptocurrencies. I know what cryptocurrencies are. I can tell you the potential to a certain extent, but I can't predict the market, right? And that's not my area of expertise. Okay. When we talk about people claiming to understand cryptocurrencies, it ranges from all kinds of things. Like, I've had people telling me, oh, that's only for the black market. That's for, those bad guys who will hack your machine and then say, pay me in Bitcoins. And there are some people who understand, but not quite understand. So today I am going to get into a very grounded approach. Today's presentation, today's webinar would be kind of setting the stage of what would be the next 2 presentations, and that's why I want them to be slightly more interactive, is where we will be able to discuss, or at least build the foundations to be able to understand how do we go about building a business around blockchain, and why this cryptocurrency and tokens that we would be looking at today are so important. Okay, to be able to get that started, I just want to kind of get the ball rolling with a problem. And this is not long back. I'm pretty sure some of the attendees over here were very much around, and maybe some of you were working at that time. So this was 1980. Okay, while you're trying to figure out what is written underneath, let me just tell you a few other things that was actually happening at that time. We used to have information stored in different computers, and every computer had different sets of information. To be able to access information, you had to log into each computer, each machine, and get the information. And the fun part was that each machine also had a different program. So now this was a very big problem just to access information. Now, the whole purpose of computing was to bring in efficiency in the society. The whole purpose of computing was to create information from data. However, if information would be in so many discrete locations with so much of effort required to be able to say it, were we actually doing our job well? So this is what happened by the none other than the person who I'm pretty sure some of you must have heard his name, and he's actually Sir now, Sir Tim Berners-Lee. Okay. And Sir Tim Berners-Lee was working in CERN, which is a computing company, firm, where what they did was, he was doing a lot of research and other stuff. And he made a proposal which was finally accepted by his boss. And the proposal was to have some kind of a mechanism. Okay. So that mechanism was what is called as hypertext. That was named later though. Okay. That the different documents in all those different computers, which would be in a network. Okay. And of course, he had a colleague who actually helped with him, worked on this particular thing with him, and they were, trying to find out what the name of this particular thing would be. So they thought, okay, let's call it the mine of information or the information mesh. However, eventually this was named something that we all as the World Wide Web. Okay, this World Wide Web was a big transformation, because now we had an integration of information that would reside in different machines. However, I just want to show you the foresight of Sir Tim Berners-Lee. He is still very active. In fact, he is active with a project which is talking about some things that we would eventually lead to. Okay. He talked about this web to be more of a social creation than a technical one, which is very, very interesting. See the foresight of the person. He could see that, I'm not doing a technological breakthrough. Definitely is very interesting to computer scientists. But the diffusion of a technological breakthrough happens only when there is a social adoption. There is some kind of a diffusion in the society. Okay. And, the whole thought process was to help people work together, and effectively, the idea was to improve our web-like existence in the world, which was golden words, and how this whole phenomena has progressed over the years is something which is very interesting. Okay. What we call as Web 1.0 is what, was when it was actually started in about 1996. Some of you must remember that we used to have these websites which have static content. So we would put some things up, put it out there, and then feel good. Hey, you know what? Go and see my website. Okay. The contents would, be some user generation was there at that point. Some users would do certain things, but mostly it was a consumption based system. Now, what happens with a consumption based system is that as humans, you don't feel empowered. We feel that, yeah, you know what, I'm reading somebody else's thing, but where is my voice here? Okay. And what do I put in over here to be able to kind of be out there? So it's like, back in those days when people used to write letters, to the editor, and that letter was published in the newspaper. And when that letter was published in the newspaper, people would be like, you know what? My letter is published in this newspaper, which means I have a voice, right? And that creates a more deep engagement, okay? A more, a person feels more empowered. And this is where the Web 2.0 comes into play, okay? Web 2.0, of course, there are some phases of Web 2.0. In some literature, people say, oh, actually, we are into Web 3.0 now, where everything is, generated by the people. There are people who don't consume news anymore. We always joke about things like WhatsApp University. Please don't go to WhatsApp University. Is this, are you being educated at this particular thing? Because there are different kinds of risks that has also come in with this. However, the empowerment aspect where the user generation information, user content would now form the collective intelligence and would form would constitute a major part of those websites. Okay, so now you have a web which is read write, where you would read things as well as be able to write. You have a blog, you have a news article, and you can go down and write something. You can publish your own stuff. You have a content management system. You have all kinds of systems, which you have a blog system. Blogs became a really big deal at this time. Facebook and all these companies are essentially a part of this phenomena. Of course, they kind of want to kind of separate themselves slightly more by calling it Web 3.0, but we consider Web 3.0 as something different in our nomenclature. Okay, so over here, as I mentioned, this is again in the same vein as what Sir Tim Berners-Lee said, that we want to empower people. We want to make them feel that they have an existence in the web. Now, Web 1.0 was not providing that. Web 1.0 was mostly designed to just put things up there so that you can consume things. However, over here, you had the ability to be a part of that whole process. Now, Web 1.0 and Web 2.0 are very interesting, but they have, I'll just show you some innovations and then I'll show you some commonalities between them. So let me show you some Web 1.0 innovations. Okay. Web 1.0 had one of the biggest innovations, or one of the biggest landmarks in Web 1.0 was the antitrust against Microsoft. Opened the doors, in many ways democratized browsers. Okay, Microsoft more or less was holding a majority of the market share of the operating system, and that is why Internet Explorer was the de facto flowing in, and then all these things happened, and then we had Mozilla and other they came in and started building some kind of a democratic system there. Then we had the search engine, which was very, very interesting. The search engine, we had Lycos, we had several other companies who had very interesting search engines, but then there was a consolidation process. And this consolidation process was none other than what we know as Google. So in fact, search, instead of search, people say Google it. So it's become, search engines. That innovation was in Web 1.0 kind of was the founding premise of companies like Google. Web 2.0 is when the interactions began, and we had very interesting phenomena where people would start building content, be a part of this whole phenomena. Wikipedia is a very, very interesting phenomena, which is probably the world's largest store of information, that if you have to search anything, there's a good chance that you'll find it in Wikipedia. Then came social media. Again, social media was popping up in different shapes and sizes at that time. And eventually, we all know there is only one social media that took over everything, Facebook. And then we had a few other different forms of social media, which is the short messaging and other stuff, which was essentially started by Twitter. And then we had a few other things that came up, but and a few others are still coming up in the current times, but then they have a different kind of a mindset. Because at this point, people were not very about the privacy aspect. That was not a very big deal. Recently, I've spoken to a few friends, and I asked them, why don't you put anything on your Facebook anymore? And the first thing they tell me is that they have a big group now. And so they kind of send messages to a limited group in their WhatsApp or something else. So there are, these are different effects of social media that has happened. Then we have commerce, which was a very big revolution at this time, where we had different kinds of e-commerce stores that kind of popped up. There was also a dot-com bubble that was for more or less was because of the e-commerce bubble. And then we have a consolidated e-commerce platform, which is none other than what we know as Amazon. Now, all these systems, why I'm kind of spending some time on it, is to give you an idea of where we are heading and being able to appreciate what is actually going to come in from blockchain. Okay. So over here, what we see is you have a very client server kind of a model. Okay. You have different clients, which would be the access machines or the devices that we access this information from. Over here, it is an oversimplified diagram. This server could have a distributed network, but this server is controlled by a company. This server is under, the tight lockup of a particular company. Now, this was the design. This was not, a scam which the companies were trying. This is how software was designed at that point of time. Now, when software architecture at this point of time, the way it was designed, but then what we see is something very interesting. What is happening is people's movements have started where they say, give back my data. When you get to know, and one of the things they always say is, when the product is free, you are the product. And Facebook and Google initially didn't start out being as monopolies. They were a part of a movement. They were innovation. They wanted to do something different. They wanted to make Web 2.0. But who knew, even they didn't know, that they would control so much of power that they could silence even the president of a country, right? Now, Facebook, Google, Twitter, as a matter of fact, they have become so powerful that they say that about 5 or 6 people in this world can control the kind of information that we get. That doesn't make this world a safe place, right? That doesn't make us feel good about it, that, we have put all the information sources, and now I dare say misinformation also, that could come in from just 5 or 6 people in this world. Okay. And also all our information is stored there. We don't know all these interactions that we do with people. What would be the economic value that these companies could extract at a later date? Could this be something like where they could blackmail you, they could threaten you, they could do all kinds of things, right? Certain things which you want to get deleted. Now, this movement resulted in something which is GDPR, which is where the people in the European Union said, no, first of all, we want security with our data. Second, we want control with our data. I want to have the right to be forgotten. So basically, if you have some data about me, if I want, you have to delete that data from your servers. Now, the diffusion of the data is so much and the caching is so much. I don't know how they're doing it, but it is almost impossible to do anything like that. There are companies that have come up who would say, I will do your reputation defender, because somebody must have written something bad about you, and that pops up in the search engine, and people would make impressions about you. Okay, so this is the web movement that we are, we are living in, we are facing, and slowly this whole thing is transforming into something which is Web 3.0. Decentralization of the World Wide Web is a phenomena which is happening at this point of time without us knowing much about it. But that is why understanding cryptocurrencies and tokens and how they is so critical to us. Okay, and I will just show you a few other things. Just a visual look of how a centralized system is so dangerous. Talking about businesses, you have a single point of failure. Of course, you could bring in redundancies in the system. I started my research as a fault-tolerant, mission-critical distributed system, but essentially the idea was all those distributed system was owned by a company. What if that company who owns it gets rogue, goes rogue, starts doing something crazy about the data, with the data? Okay, so this is what's centralized, but distributed is you have multiple kinds of nodes, and these are, now we want to add the whole idea of these nodes are independent. These nodes are not controlled by someone. Yeah. So the server model actually creates something which is called a data monopoly, a monopoly where the data is controlled by someone. However, the peer-to-peer model creates a sovereign kind of a system, a data sovereignty, where we know that the data would not be of any economic value to one individual. My data is owned by me. If I decide to monetize it, that's a different deal. And I can sell it to someone. I can sell my artwork to someone. But it is not something which somebody owns just because they gave me a free access to a system. Okay. Just to kind of sum it up, the Web 1.0 was information economy. Okay. We had simple applications. When I started computer science, the first program that we would write was Hello World. Okay. Essentially giving that whole message that you're writing, putting something out there which will be disseminated to the whole world. When we get into the Web 2 is the platform model, which is where we read and write. There is a platform for you to be able to put your voice, to be able to put your information, which goes as Hello World. Okay. So, and there is an interaction also, people talk to you. So it's more of a hello, hi, how are you doing kind of a world. Okay. Now, Web 3 is very interesting. Okay. People would say, oh, you are saying that we need to change the whole internet back. That's not possible. What are you talking about? Actually, that's very possible because we are not changing anything in the front end. The front end stays the same. It is just the back end. It's just the machines where the data was stored is not going to be owned by a company, but would be owned by many people. Now that makes it very, very interesting for us to be able to understand that now, how do we kind of manage the flow of data? How does this data go from one place to the other? Who controls this data? How does it get monetized? And that is the genesis of what we call as the token economy. That is why tokens are so important. I hope we understand this piece. We should not get too carried away with Dogecoin rates going at 12 cents and Bitcoin going at 63,000. That's good. That's good. That shows that people are adopting this. But that should not be our motivation to go to cryptocurrencies. Our motivation to go to cryptocurrency is that it is the future. That is where we will be living. In the next 10 years, that is how all transactions would be happening. In the back end, in the front end, you would not get to see any difference. You would still have the same apps, maybe not by the same company, but in the back end, everything would be running a bit differently. So this token economy that we have got into now makes it very, very important for business people, for computer scientists, for normal people to understand what exactly is the deal here. What am I committing to? What am I working on? How does this affect me? Okay, so today it's more on a higher level. Of course, I will dig a bit deeper into the protocols as well, but the idea is to kind of give you this whole understanding of why we have got into token economy. So once you've got into token economy, let's start into getting into the stuff that is, what we will be living with. So we have something which is called the cryptocurrency or the coins, okay, which is mostly for a general purpose use. It's like money here, okay. It's for, it's a fundamental unit of value in the system, how you generate value in the system, and a representation of the value is what token is. Okay, I will elaborate more so that it becomes more clear. But there is a big difference between a coin and a token. Okay, let me just show you what a coin is. Okay, now a coin also, since this is digital world, okay, we don't have the government controlling how much money we need to print, and not backed with anything, and then somebody is collecting debt on that, and then eventually the future generations would have an issue. That doesn't work like that over here. Over here, we have a protocol which is going to take care of things. And what we are going to be ensuring as individuals is whether that protocol is watertight, whether that process, whether the steps of how this whole thing is going to be generated is, or protected, is watertight, so that there's nobody who's printing or making digital currency at home. Okay, and if somebody can make digital currency at home, then we have a problem, because this is distributed. This is not controlled by a central agency. In fact, this is not controlled by anyone. This is a distributed system. Globally, it holds the standard. So we have to have a protocol which kind of provides security and access for the blockchain. So this is one of the things. The other thing is, once you are printing money, we have to have a mechanism to be able to use that money, right? How do we provide a mechanism to use that money? So we used standard, it's very interesting. We are not going to be introducing some very, terms which might be very new. We are using terms which you and I can relate even without the technology. If we say a wallet, what is the first thing that you have in your wallet? You have identification information and you have money, right? So over here in the wallet, you will be able to digitally, in your digital wallet, you would have these digital assets, this cryptocurrency stored. And there should be some kind of a mechanism that you can go with your wallet to any place and then use it for any kind of financial transactions, right? Now, just to sum it up, a coin is something that is used to pay for a transaction. Okay, so if there is a transaction, you pay money for it. Or, if, like JP and I went out and JP paid for the food, and then I came back and said, JP, you're very nice to me, but then here you are, I have to, we'll have to go Dutch, and, please take $20 from me. So JP paid $40, which was, for the food, and then I came back and I gave him $20. So that $20 that I pay him is different from the $40 that he paid, but then they kind of, compensate for one another. So essentially, my $20 would have a different kind of a number. His two $20 that he gave would have different numbers, but then they could be replaced. Okay, so we could also trade or replace with something else which is of equal value. Okay, this is very important. So if you have one Bitcoin and I have one Bitcoin, we have to have a mechanism that you get that 63,500 US dollars, I get 63,500 US dollars, and if you are exchanging it in Canada, you would get the equivalent of 63,500 US dollars in Canadian dollars. Okay, that's how it should work. If it doesn't work like that, then we have a problem. For that, we need to make sure that there are a few things that has to be set up. Now, if you are able to do more than that, okay, with the currency, then it is not a cryptocurrency. It is something what we call as a token. I'll give you a very simple example of a token. If you've ever been to the casino, you don't play with money, right? You do play with money actually, but you play with the representation of a money, which is the token, right? The representation of the money, which is the token, right, is something which is of no economic value when you move out of the casino. Suppose I went to Las Vegas and then I go to India and then tell somebody that here you go, this is the token from Caesar's palace. They might say, oh, this looks pretty good. I can put it up on the wall saying that this is something for a collection, but it is of no economic value, right? See it the other way. Suppose we are working in some kind of an economy where people are exchanging this. Suppose you give a tip to somebody in the casino, and that tip is one of the part of their livelihood. They won't go and just store that tip in their house, in that token in the house. They would go and cash it for money, right? So this is what token is all about. Token is something, I'll show you there are different paths of a token also. But essentially, if you understand, a cryptocurrency has value. So I can go with Bitcoin from Las Vegas to India to Canada, and that's fine. It has the same value, but the token would have value only in localized areas. So if you see a token, it is more of an IOU kind of a statement. Of course, not a tooth fairy kind of an IOU, but an IOU which is issued, and it represents some kind of a value. Now, value does not necessarily mean money in all the time, but it has some kind of a value. It could give you some kind of a utility, some kind of a economic value, some kind of identification value, multiple kinds of things. Okay. Now, it has rights and obligations. You have to follow those rights and obligations when you are holding a token. Okay, there are certain things. It is defined by a contract. So, you can do this token. When you do this, if you use this token, then your token is consumed, and then that token goes to somebody else, so on and so forth. Some simple examples, which, I kind of gave you one, which is a poker chip is a token. Okay, a concert ticket is a token. A stock certificate is a token. Bond is a token, so on and so forth. Yeah. There are some tokens. Now we have different types of tokens, which are also called the physical aspects of the token that I'm going to show you next. So the first thing that a token has is something which is called a substrate. A substrate is a place where a token is issued from. Okay. Now, this is almost always a blockchain platform, because if the token is issued from a central authority, then we are breaking the norms of the distributed system. So we have to have a blockchain platform which has the ability to issue these tokens. And the blockchain platform which has been most widely used is Ethereum. Okay, Ethereum has become so successful because of its ability to be able to do this whole token economy that we can work on it, besides the smart contracts and other things that it is able to support, which is distributed computing as well. Now, once a token is issued, again, there is a system only where the token would be applicable. Okay, so if I have a token which is issued by a blockchain, by the Ethereum system, it might not work everywhere, but it would work in a subsystem of the substrate. Yeah. So this is important that we also understand that piece. The next thing is a few classifications of token, which is essentially understanding what type of token you have. If your token is passive in nature, Okay, then a token is something that you hold on to. It is something which you can't sell, or there are certain things that are tied to it. It is not very, very active. It needs to be activated to be able to do certain things. A token can be an action based token, so you do something and I'll give you this token. Yeah, a token can be an active token. Okay, a token can be an access to certain functions, certain functionalities. So if you have this token, you will be able to do it. Yeah, so there are different classifications of in terms of the role. And then we also have, this is where it starts getting very interesting, and maybe many people would probably be hearing this whole thing of non-fungible tokens. Okay, maybe that name is not very well written. It should not be non-fungible. Fungible means something like a cash, something which can be changed. Non-fungible is unique. Okay, uh, uh, fungible tokens and unique tokens are also have two different classifications: transferable and non-transferable. When you have a fungible token that's transferable, is essentially cash, commodity, cryptocurrency. A non-transferable would be a coupon, like I just bought my coffee today with a free Dunkin' coupon which is linked to my account. Or if I go to Costco, I have a cash card, but then that cash card, the cash reward is not active unless and until I show them my identification back, because that is linked to my account. Okay, then we have a gym membership, right? If I buy a gym membership, I can't just tell someone, okay, you know what, I just bought the membership, why don't you go on my behalf and do exercise? Or I'm just replacing you with me. The gym is not going to accept that. Maybe I can bring in a guest, but that's different. I get some kind of transferable tokens for a certain period of time that could have a lifetime. Yeah, time. Then we have these unique tokens. Okay, uh, unique tokens could be a lottery token. You buy a lottery token, you don't sign, so it is transferable. Yeah, you could have ownership of a car, so that ownership of something, I own my car right now and I can pass it on to someone. You could have an art ownership. As a matter of fact, this is again a transferable ownership, and that is where you would be able to trade for the value of the artwork. You have the house keys. Well, you don't want to make it transferable unless until you're planning to sell your house. That might be pretty bizarre. The non-transferable things are essentially tied to your identity. Like, it'd be pretty wild for you to transfer your unique driver's license to someone. Yeah. Your voting token to someone. So there are some companies, some countries rather, who have started this whole phenomena of voting to be able to do voting in the blockchain, and then everybody gets a voting token. The voting token is tied to their identity, and based on their identical verification, you can vote from home. Your prescription. Okay, so these are some unique non-transferable tokens. Now, when we talk about tokens, now all this is very important. Again, everything ties to the Web3. If you remember Web3, what I mentioned, we talked about the whole new way of doing business is the backend is getting decentralized. Now we have to understand how that decentralized backend needs to be mobilized for different kinds of business models. And to be able to understand that, we need to know how do we incentivize that backend. And that is why this becomes very important. Okay. Now, there are some other interesting things about this token or coin is, when you have a cryptocurrency that goes in a circle, I give somebody money, that person uses that money further up, and then it keeps going around, right? I think there was one movie where this person gets the money back. I don't remember the name of the movie, but that was very interesting. But yeah, so over here, it goes in a circular path. The other thing is where we have a token, right? You use the token, in a casino while you're there, you keep playing with the token, and then finally go and cash the token and get out, and that token comes back. Somebody else, when puts in money, gets that token and is able to do the same thing. Yep. Which means this running in the economy, right? And there is an outlet to be able to for anyone to kind of realize or gain benefit from that token. The other way or other way that we design token is when we have a source to exchange. So once the token is used, it's it's good. It's like a one single access, like when you have those long distance cards, they have a number. Yeah, they give you a token, you use that token, and once it's done, that token is no good. It's the value is done, right? So there are different kinds of designs. Now you can see there's different kinds of designs that we could have in the backend to be able to support business. Now, to be able to understand these different kinds of designs, we also need to understand, now this is going to get slightly technical, okay? Not very technical. This is again at a very high managerial level, okay? Is where we start looking at something which is called the ERCs, okay? ERCs is nothing but the Ethereum request for comment. What happens is you define a particular protocol as to how a token would be generated, okay? And that protocol, you try to build a consensus between different authors so that people start using your protocol. You publish that protocol in Ethereum and say, hey, you know what, this is how you can generate tokens for NFCs. I have built up a more optimal model, and you publish it there, and then people say, this looks good, okay, let's assign it a number. There are some mechanisms for that. Then people start using it. Then there would be some kind of a peer review, okay, and then finally it becomes a standard. Okay, so it goes through a whole process. It's not just that somebody just comes up with a bright idea and that becomes the new standard. So the most common of all tokens, which was used by ICOs, is the ERC20 token. No, sorry, I'm extremely sorry. ERC20 protocol to generate the tokens. Okay, this is the most popular standard. Most of the ICOs were used generating this. This protocol had nothing but just 6 functions, okay, which talks about, I think there are 2 more extensions that they added to this later on, but mostly the implementation is done with 6 functions. What is the total supply? Okay, then you have a sender function, the allowance function, okay, how much is how much you're transferring, how much is left, whether you approve, and then you have a receiver, and that's it. That's good. So this particular standard mechanism of how you would generate tokens would kind of helps you implement this whole process very easily. Okay, it becomes like, now I know that if I have to do an ICO, I go and do an ERC20 token, and I'm good with the generation process. Okay. They offer since we have a total supply and we have a good mechanism of buying and selling, there would be liquidity, which is absolutely a very important aspect in any kind of economy. If there is no liquidity, then suppose I go to the casino and say, yeah, I want to encash these 20 tokens, and they say, oh, we've run out of cash, sorry, we can come back tomorrow. That doesn't work, right? So there has to be some mechanisms of how this whole thing is set up. Yeah. Now, the main problem that ERC20 faces is its simplicity sometimes becomes its problem. Okay, what happens is that if I send, suppose I'm sending a ERC token to somebody over here, and let's since I see JP only there, so let's say JP, okay, and JP has a wallet which can only accept Ether, yeah, and I send him say Neo tokens. Okay, what happens is that Neo would not be right, sorry, some other token, anything in Ethereum. Okay, I send him some token, and his wallet is not able to accept the token, but there is no way he can reject, there is no way he can send it back, and there is no way I can reclaim the token. So all these new projects that start up, where they say, if you want to buy, then buy Ethereum, but then send this particular token to this. If you send something else, then you will lose the money. So that's what has happened over here. And people have, I think the last time they checked was 2017, about $30 million was, and probably with the current value even more, was just sitting there, and you can't do anything with it because it's done. You sent to a wrong address, it's kind of non-recoverable. Yeah. The other thing is, again, the simplicity aspect, that even a small kid can start a ERC20, start an ICO, and we had lots of scam with these ICOs with one website and people selling all kinds of crazy things there, and that kind of brought ICOs down a bit. They earned a bad name. People said they are more of a scam than actual business. All kinds of things started happening because of that, because in countries where there is deregulation, and just still be able to raise money. Okay. And also cannot modify the smart contracts once they are set up. Okay. So what we have after that is a E65 token, which is very important, because that is the founding premise of the non-fungible tokens that we are hearing a lot, which is 721. So this protocol actually creates the ability for you to be able to call from one smart contract on a function in another smart contract. Okay, which is very interesting, because if you write a smart contract and you publish the different functions in the smart contract, some other smart contract can call it. Okay. This is the founding premise of the 721 token, which I think many people must have heard, which is the standard for the non-fungible tokens. Okay, this creates unique tokens, and you have the ability to be able to define a contract, which is basically who's owning it, and also some kind of a function. So any kind of digital asset is protected with the ERC 721. However, the problem with ERC 721 protocol is that every time you kind of register this in Ethereum, you need to pay something which is called a gas fee. So if you have multiple non-fungible assets, right, you would have to pay a lot of gas fee to be able to put them in there. So what the new protocol that has come up with this company, I think Engine, okay, and they created this with multiple tokens in a single contract. Okay, so this is again NFC, but NFTs rather. But what we have here is that they in one single contract you can deploy multiple tokens. So this reduces your cost or the gas fees. It's like something like 721 does something like, if you are checking out from a grocery store, you have to check out every item one at a time and pay also for each item. Okay, over here you're putting everything out, everything is getting collected, you have up to 2200, and then you kind of check out once. So this is more efficient that way. And then there is one more token, which is ERC 223, which is currently not deployed as much, but this solves the problem of ERC20. If you remember, I mentioned that ERC20, if you send it to a wrong address, there is no way to recover it. And there are some mechanisms that we've designed, at least some protocols that we've designed to be able to recover that. Okay, so now you have the ability to accept or decline the tokens, and when you decline the token, that comes back to the smart contract address. Now, what I tried to show you today was just a very high level view and kind of show you all the whole dimensions of how tokens are set up. What we intend to do in the next two presentations is to kind of take a deep dive into maybe one use case and show what are the different types of mechanisms that we would be able to generate the tokens, be able to run that system, and at the end of the day have a successful Web 3.0 platform. Thank you very much for your for listening to me, and it is time for some questions. I'll stop sharing and go to full screen.
Thank you, Nikhil. We have one question here. Is NFT another buzzword, or is it going to stay for some time?
Interesting question. NFT, see, everything starts with a buzz, right? To be able to get somebody's attention, we have to do something interesting. Like I teach visualization, and the first thing is that we teach is you have to have something which gets the person's interest. So NFT has got uh, people's interest with all these different projects that has happened, and these big numbers that people see. However, NFTs would be mainstream in the future. And next time when we meet, we would possibly show you a business case, a real grounded business case with NFTs in in some kind of a space where it is not, it does not look like a buzzword, but more of a realistic kind of a thing.
Thanks. Another question. Do all applications or process need to migrate to blockchain, or only those process that require a high level of trust, independence, and neutrality?
That's a very interesting. That's one of the things that the there is there are companies who have started migrating to blockchain, and there are different strategies that people have designed to migrate to newer technologies. Like I'll just go take one step back. When we had the SAP ERP system, people said, oh, it's not a good idea to take one step at a time, you should go big bang. And then we had case studies like Hershey's, where they kind of got into trouble because they went into the ERP system right before and their sales dipped. So we have to be careful when we talk about blockchain transition. In my opinion, okay, again, this is not, there are different schools of thought here. In my opinion, you should start with one piece at a time. If you start with one piece at a time, what's going to happen is you will be able to get the confidence and be able to see what are the transformations that you need to do in your business process. Bear in mind, blockchain just for the sake of saying that, oh, we have a blockchain, is no fun. Blockchain actually is of value when we use the decentralization to the best of its ability. And to be able to use the decentralization to the best of the abilities requires a transformational change in the organization, because that's a new thought process. Of course, the organization can still define the governance principles, but decentralization can be something which the organization is not ready for. You have to do it as a small experiment, as a small pilot each time.
We have a raised hand here by Marina, so I'll open up our mic.
Don't you think the most useful use of NFT today is the tickets to sports and concert events that is already functioning?
That's absolutely right. So actually, the Germany's soccer team's football soccer team has actually started having their tickets as NFT tickets. Yes, that is definitely one of the big uses of the NFT tokens, but I feel that we can do even more than that. If you want to ask me what are the areas that I feel NFT tokens are going to be big deal, I feel NFT tokens are going to be big deal when I'm going to manage my own identity. I will be able to have, if you are, if there is somebody whom you want to give a power of attorney or something, yeah, I can give certain aspects of mine for that person to manage. In my last presentation, I talked about the decentralized autonomous organization. I'm not going to give somebody a blanket ownership of me. So with an NFT, I would be able to manage different aspects of what an AI machine can do for me, an agent can do for me, a person can do for me, so on and so forth. So we have much more than just soccer tickets or real estate applications. Of course, real estate applications would be another very big area where NFT tokens would make a big impact. But yes, I agree with you that for now we are already seeing that happening in for sports tickets.
Excellent. The next question is, right now, Bitcoin and other crypto value is going up like crazy, and people are treating as an investment as opposed as to a means of payment medium. Will there be some kind of equilibrium?
Where there'll be some kind of equilibrium. Now, this is this is a very difficult question to answer, because many people who own Bitcoin don't even know what is the purpose of a Bitcoin. They just think it as a financial asset which they're buying just because the value is gaining. They're gaining the value, right? It will be a gradual process. I don't think it is going to be that fast that people would actually start understanding what is the purpose of this, because the values at this point of time, whatever is shiny kind of supersedes the actual motivation of putting these things together. But I hope, and I'm pretty sure that in the next 2-3 years, we should be able to see some things when people see that their lives being transformed, the way they do business changes, then the way they see these assets would be much more than just seeing them as instruments where they can make a quick buck. That's what I feel.
The mining process consumes so much energy. Are you aware of any work to save this mining energy?
That is definitely a very big problem, being a sustainable person, and especially when we talk about Bitcoin, it consumes a lot of energy. But then we are coming up with mechanisms which would be not that mining intensive, and actually the proof of work protocol is very energy intensive, but we are coming with more optimal protocols, like proof of stake, delegated proof of stake, which would be more efficient and less power intensive, if I may say.
Thank you. Now there's one last question, and we'll have to stop while I have a second, depending on how easy it is to answer. We can answer 2 last ones. So sure. The first one is, will the boundary of a token within the application be a limiting factor, and the rise of a multiple cluster that probably will create a premium to be part of a cluster in a way violating the blockchain integrity?
Very interesting. Now, see, the boundary of a token is definitely a way where we are able to secure where this token is working. Like, if you see what they say is, if you issue a non-fungible token in a blockchain, right, there is no stopping for you to have that same non-fungible token issued in another blockchain. So essentially, it is just a contract that the artist has with the person who's owning it, that you are getting a collectible which is not going to be somewhere else, right? So if we are able to have cross-chain relationships, I personally feel that would be interesting. But at this point of time, I am not in a position to be able to answer that question with a great deal of confidence, this way or that way. That is something which we'll have to wait and see.
Okay, we have a raised hand here. I'll allow Kishore to talk. Kishore, you're up.
Hi, yes, thanks for the opportunity. Yes, the question is, now blockchain is consuming lots and lot computing energy, And now when we have more and more applications, decentralized, and then the consensus mechanism has to be implemented for any implementation, right? So then the data is going to store in multiple places, and the redundant data is going to need more and more storage space. So how do we foresee the quantum computing? And because it also it may take some time to get quantum computing embraced into mainstream and commercialized. Now, where do we see that blockchain coming of age, and quantum computing meeting that needs of it? So do you see that it may have a setback till the quantum computing comes, or how do we take it?
So Kishore, what happens with blockchain is, this whole idea of proof of work protocol, basically with the Bitcoin, is that, it is essentially your computing power that kind of gives you a little bit of a leg, not little bit, actually a lot of leg space as compared to the other people, which means that you have the ability to be able to be the miner. Okay, now there are certain things that the system automatically takes care of, which is they won't let you succeed multiple times. So you won't be winning solving that cryptographical puzzle each time. However, if you own 50% of the network, then you have a risk, right? We are coming up with a lot of platforms which have already claimed to be quantum resistant. So essentially, quantum computing is a natural progression that we are seeing in the computing space, which is, it is not at loggerheads with what blockchain is, right? It is just that we need to make sure that blockchains of the future are going to be secure, because quantum computing is going to give you infinite power, right? It is something like, when I was in school, the first satellite that went up had 20 megahertz of processor speed. Now my cell phone has much more computing power. That doesn't make me a dangerous person, because our applications have evolved over the period of time, right? Same way, a blockchain would also be able to, I'm pretty sure with quantum computing, it is only going to get better from there. Any more questions?
Last one.
Sure.
What about government regulation intervention? It does defeat the purpose of decentralization with the regulations, though.
So I will just take one step back on that. Okay. Blockchain was very libertarian when it was started. And the whole belief thinking process of libertarian is, we don't want governance. However, the current day blockchains have brought the government also, I mean, especially those, not the public blockchain as much, because public blockchain by design is supposed to be cross-border, supposed to be such that it cannot be regulated. But there is oversight mechanisms that people are looking at, which would at least help us do certain things. If we are able to create protocols, ERC tokens, which would have some kind of a mechanism of oversight, some kind of a mechanism of, the system not going rogue completely, but having some kind of oversight by which the government can have a look at. Now, when we actually have a private blockchain, then government definitely comes into play big time. The problem is only public blockchain. Private blockchain, I can actually add the government agency as one of the nodes to be able to validate, look at all the transactions, and have more transparency. Like, one of the applications is with this whole drug and the vaccine transportation. If I add the government agencies over there, they will be able to look at counterfeiting in live stream. They will be able to see how the whole supply chain is flowing, right? So it's a mixed bag. I am not anti-government, but at the same time, by design, decentralization requires you to give you that kind of a freedom. How do we create kind of a mechanism where government is a party to it is something which is an ongoing debate. Public blockchains are absolutely that is a difficult thing to do. Private blockchain, not quite. But at the wallet level, when you're going to Coinbase, There is the KYC, right? And the government exactly knows how much tokens you're trading, where you're trading, how much money you're making. They automatically generates a tax certificate if that's what of the problem is. But then there are tax havens where people can go and still make turn that money, right? If that's in your mobile wallet that you can move around with.
Thank you, Nikhil. So we reached our 11:30 meeting webinar ending. Great Q&A session today. Very interesting presentation as well. Thank you all for your time. We'll be doing this next month, or give or take a few days, with the second part, and we'll send out invitations shortly. If you have any last words, Nikhil, for the folk.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for your kind words. I can see a few in the chat, and all of you who attended. Thank you so much. And please feel free to reach out and to join our LinkedIn group, which would be very interesting. I am also in the process of identifying people who are interested in being authors. That's a different thing. Once you join the group, and we can engage in a dialogue on certain things which are very interesting in this blockchain space. So feel free to be connected. We are all very accessible. JP and I are, would love to work with all of you over here, and hope to see you soon. I hope to see you in the next presentation as well.
Great. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.